The morning sun cast long shadows across the remote shooting range nestled in the Montana wilderness. Sarah Martinez adjusted her position on the elevated platform, her weathered hands moving with practiced precision as she cleaned the bolt of her custom-built rifle. The weapon was her pride and joy, a .338 Lapua Magnum that she had modified herself over countless hours in her workshop. Every component had been carefully selected and fine-tuned for maximum accuracy at extreme distances. Sarah had been coming to this range for over 15 years, ever since her discharge from the Marine Corps. The facility was privately owned and catered to serious long-range shooters who demanded more than the standard 100-yard lanes found at typical ranges. Here, targets could be placed at distances exceeding 4,000 meters, challenging even the most skilled marksmen to push the boundaries of precision shooting. At 38 years old, Sarah possessed an unusual combination of technical knowledge and intuitive understanding of ballistics that few could match. Her military background had provided the foundation, but her civilian years had allowed her to refine her skills without the constraints of military doctrine. She approached shooting as both art and science, studying wind patterns, atmospheric conditions, and the subtle physics that govern projectile flight across vast distances. The range master, Jim Henderson, walked over to her position carrying a steaming cup of coffee. Jim was a former Army Ranger who had opened the facility after retiring from active duty. He and Sarah had developed a mutual respect over the years, often engaging in friendly discussions about shooting techniques and equipment modifications. "Working on the 3,800-meter shot again today?" Jim asked, settling into a chair beside her shooting position. He knew Sarah's routine well. She typically spent her first hour cleaning and inspecting her equipment, then moved on to shorter distance warm-up shots before attempting her long-range challenges. "Always," Sarah replied, running a cleaning patch through the barrel with meticulous care. "Yesterday I was getting consistent hits at 3,600 meters, but the wind shifts at 3,800 are giving me trouble. I think I need to adjust my reading of the mirage patterns in the final 200 meters of flight." Jim nodded appreciatively. Few shooters even attempted shots beyond 2,000 meters, and fewer still could achieve consistent accuracy at such distances. Sarah's dedication to mastering extreme-range shooting had earned her a reputation throughout the long-range shooting community. Word of her abilities had spread through online forums and shooting competitions, though she rarely sought publicity for her achievements. The challenge of hitting targets at 3,800 meters was immense. At that distance, a bullet would be in flight for over 5 seconds, during which time it would drop more than 400 feet from its initial trajectory. Environmental factors became exponentially more important. A wind shift of just a few miles per hour could push the bullet several feet off target. Temperature, humidity, and even the Coriolis effect caused by Earth's rotation all played significant roles in determining where the bullet would impact. Sarah's approach to these challenges was methodical and scientific. She maintained detailed logs of every shot, recording atmospheric conditions, wind patterns, and the precise adjustments she made to her scope. Over time, these records have become an invaluable database that allowed her to make increasingly accurate predictions about bullet behavior under various conditions. Her rifle was a masterpiece of precision engineering. The barrel was a custom-made piece crafted by a renowned gunsmith in Colorado, featuring a unique rifling pattern that imparted exceptional stability to the bullet's flight. The stock was adjustable in multiple dimensions, allowing Sarah to achieve perfect alignment and comfort for extended shooting sessions. The scope was a high-end German optic with crystal-clear glass and precise tracking mechanisms that could compensate for the extreme bullet drop at long ranges. But equipment alone was not enough. Sarah's success stemmed from her deep understanding of the fundamental principles that governed long-range shooting. She had spent countless hours studying ballistics textbooks, consulting with physicists, and conducting her own experiments to better understand how various factors affected bullet flight. This theoretical knowledge, combined with thousands of hours of practical experience, had elevated her abilities far beyond those of typical recreational shooters. As she finished cleaning her rifle, Sarah noticed a black SUV pulling into the parking area. The vehicle was nondescript, but had the subtle characteristics that suggested official use: tinted windows, low-profile antennas, and the kind of purposeful simplicity that marked government transportation. She watched as two men emerged from the vehicle and began walking toward the range office. The first man was tall and lean, moving with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to physical demands. His civilian clothes were neat but practical, and his alert posture suggested military or law enforcement background. The second man was older, perhaps in his late 50s, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Both men carried themselves with the quiet confidence that Sarah recognized from her own military experience. Jim excused himself to greet the newcomers, leaving Sarah to continue her preparations. She loaded 5 carefully prepared cartridges into her rifle's magazine, each round hand-loaded to exact specifications. The bullets were match-grade projectiles with exceptional ballistic coefficients, paired with powder charges measured to within 1/10 of a grain. Even the brass cases had been precisely prepared, with neck tensions and overall lengths adjusted for optimal consistency. From her position on the shooting platform, Sarah could see Jim engaged in conversation with the two visitors. Their discussion appeared serious, with occasional gestures toward the longer-range target areas. After several minutes, the 3 men began walking in her direction. "Sarah," Jim called out as they approached, "I'd like you to meet some visitors who are interested in observing our long-range capabilities." He gestured toward the taller man. "This is David Chun and his colleague Robert Williams. They're here on official business to evaluate extreme-distance shooting techniques." David stepped forward with an easy smile, extending his hand. "Ms. Martinez, Jim tells us you're one of the most skilled long-range shooters he's ever seen. We're hoping you might be willing to demonstrate some of your techniques while we're here." Sarah accepted the handshake, noting the calloused hands and firm grip that confirmed her assessment of the man's background. "I'm always happy to share knowledge about long-range shooting," she replied. "What specifically are you interested in observing?" Robert Williams spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the authority of years in leadership positions. "We understand you're working on consistent accuracy at distances approaching 4,000 meters. Our organization has interest in understanding the practical limitations and possibilities of such extreme-range shooting." The phrase "our organization" was deliberately vague, but Sarah understood the implications. These men represented some branch of military or intelligence services, likely evaluating techniques that could have operational applications. She had encountered similar inquiries before, though usually through more formal channels. "I can show you what I'm working on," Sarah said, gesturing toward her rifle. "Though I should mention that 3,800-meter shooting is still very much a work in progress for me. I achieve hits about 60% of the time under good conditions, but environmental factors can reduce that significantly." David's eyes showed genuine interest. 60% at 3,800 meters is extraordinary by any standard. Most military snipers consider 1,500 meters to be the practical limit for consistent accuracy. What you're describing represents a completely different level of capability. Sarah began explaining her methodical approach, describing how she analyzed environmental conditions and made the complex calculations required for extreme distance shots. She showed them her shooting logs, pointing out patterns in wind behavior and atmospheric effects that she had identified over months of careful observation. "The key is understanding that at these distances, you're not just shooting a target," she explained. "You're predicting where the target will be when the bullet arrives, accounting for every factor that will influence the bullet's path during its flight time. It requires patience, precise observation, and the willingness to pass on shots when conditions aren't right." As she spoke, Sarah noticed David's expression becoming increasingly focused. His questions revealed a sophisticated understanding of ballistics and shooting principles that went beyond casual interest. This was clearly someone with extensive training and experience in precision shooting, though he hadn't yet revealed the full extent of his background. The morning had progressed to the point where atmospheric conditions were approaching optimal for long-range shooting. The air was stable, with minimal temperature variations that could cause bullet deflection. Wind patterns were relatively consistent, without the gusty conditions that made accurate shooting nearly impossible. Sarah positioned herself behind her rifle, adjusting the scope settings for the 3,800-meter target. The target itself was barely visible to the naked eye, appearing as a small speck against the distant hillside. Through her scope, she could see the black circle that marked her aiming point, though atmospheric distortion caused it to shimmer and dance. "Before I take this shot," she said, settling into her firing position, "let me explain what I'm seeing and thinking." She began describing her reading of the wind patterns, the atmospheric conditions, and the minute adjustments she was making to compensate for the extreme distance. David and Robert listened intently as Sarah worked through her pre-shot routine. Her process was remarkably thorough, involving multiple observations of environmental indicators and careful calculation of the required adjustments. The level of detail and precision in her approach was impressive even to trained observers. "Wind at 800 meters appears to be coming from 2 o'clock at about 8 miles per hour," Sarah narrated as she prepared for the shot. "At 1,600 meters, I could see a slight shift to 3 o'clock, probably 6 miles per hour. The mirage patterns suggest relatively stable air temperature, but there's some vertical movement that could affect the bullet path." She made final adjustments to her scope, then settled into a comfortable shooting position. Her breathing slowed and became controlled, and her entire demeanor shifted to one of intense concentration. This was the moment when all her preparation and calculation would be tested against the reality of ballistics physics. The rifle's report echoed across the valley as Sarah fired her first shot. Through their spotting scopes, the observers tracked the bullet's path toward the distant target. At 3,800 meters, even with high-powered optics, it was difficult to see the precise impact point immediately. Sarah remained motionless behind her rifle, maintaining her sight picture while waiting for feedback on the shot's accuracy. Her spotter, using a more powerful scope than the observers, called out the impact point after several seconds of searching. 2 inches low, 1 inch right, he announced. "Excellent shot considering the conditions." Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope and prepared for a second shot. Her confidence was evident as she worked through the same careful process, making slight modifications based on the feedback from her first attempt. The precision of her adjustments demonstrated the depth of her understanding of long-range shooting principles. David watched this demonstration with growing appreciation for Sarah's abilities. Her technical knowledge was impressive, but, more importantly, her practical application of that knowledge under challenging conditions showed true mastery of the discipline. Few shooters possessed both the theoretical understanding and practical skill necessary for such extreme distance accuracy. As Sarah prepared for her second shot, David found himself evaluating not just her shooting ability, but her overall approach to the challenge. Her methodical preparation, careful observation of conditions, and systematic adjustment process revealed a mindset that would be valuable in operational contexts where precision was paramount. The second shot rang out across the valley, and again the observers tracked its path toward the distant target. This time, the spotter's call was even more encouraging. "Dead center, excellent hit." Sarah allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction as she made notes in her shooting log. 2 hits out of 2 attempts at 3,800 meters represented exceptional performance, especially with observers present who might have added psychological pressure to the situation. Robert Williams stepped closer to the shooting position, his expression reflecting genuine admiration for what he had witnessed. "Ms. Martinez, that was remarkable shooting by any standard. The precision and consistency you've demonstrated exceed anything I've seen at such extreme distances." Sarah began safing her rifle while responding to Robert's comment. "Thank you, though I should emphasize that these were favorable conditions. Wind, temperature, and visibility were all near optimal for long-range shooting. On many days, I wouldn't even attempt shots at this distance because environmental factors make success unlikely." David's next comment surprised everyone present. "I appreciate your honesty about the limitations, but I wonder if you'd be interested in a more challenging demonstration. I have some experience with long-range shooting myself, and I'd like to propose a friendly comparison of techniques at this distance. The casual nature of his suggestion didn't mask its significance. Jim, Sarah, and Robert all recognized that David was revealing more about his background and capabilities than his initial introduction had suggested. Experienced long-range shooters who could operate at 3,800 meters were extremely rare, particularly those with apparent official connections. Sarah's competitive instincts were immediately engaged. Throughout her shooting career, she had rarely encountered others who could match her abilities at extreme distances. The opportunity to observe and learn from another skilled practitioner was appealing, regardless of the outcome of any comparison. "I'd be very interested in seeing your approach," Sarah replied, her tone reflecting both curiosity and competitive enthusiasm. Different shooters often develop unique techniques for dealing with the challenges of extreme distance shooting. "I'm always eager to learn new methods." David nodded appreciatively, then walked back to the SUV to retrieve his equipment. When he returned, he was carrying a rifle case that immediately caught Sarah's attention. The case was military spec, built for durability and protection of precision equipment. Its dimensions suggested a weapon designed for extreme range applications. As David opened the case, Sarah could see that his rifle was quite different from her own custom-built weapon. While her rifle was clearly the product of civilian precision shooting culture, with its adjustable stock and target-oriented features, David's weapon had the purposeful, mission-focused appearance of military equipment. Every component was selected for reliability and effectiveness rather than maximum theoretical precision. The rifle was chambered in .338 Lapua Magnum, the same caliber as Sarah's weapon, but the overall design philosophy was distinctly different. Where Sarah's rifle emphasized adjustability and fine-tuning capabilities, David's weapon prioritized durability and consistent performance under adverse conditions. Both approaches had merit, but they reflected different priorities and applications for long-range shooting. David's preparation routine was noticeably different from Sarah's elaborate process. His equipment checks were thorough but efficient, focused on verifying functionality rather than achieving perfect optimization. His shooting position was established quickly, and his environmental assessment was completed with obvious experience but less detailed analysis than Sarah typically employed. "Interesting approach," Sarah commented as she watched David's preparation. "Your technique seems more oriented toward rapid deployment than extended precision optimization." David glanced over with a slight smile. Different missions require different approaches. In operational contexts, the ability to establish an effective shooting position quickly often outweighs the advantages of extensive preparation time. Though for this demonstration, I'll take whatever time is needed to make the best shot possible. His comment provided another hint about his background without explicitly revealing details. Sarah understood that she was observing someone whose long-range shooting experience had been developed in contexts quite different from civilian precision shooting competitions. The implications were intriguing and somewhat intimidating. As David settled behind his rifle, his demeanor shifted in a way that reminded Sarah of her own military experience. The casual, friendly conversation ended, replaced by intense focus on the technical and mental demands of extreme distance shooting. This was clearly someone who had performed under pressure in situations where accuracy was not just a matter of personal satisfaction, but potentially a matter of life and death. The afternoon sun was creating perfect conditions for long-range observation, with clear air and minimal atmospheric distortion. Both shooters had access to excellent environmental conditions that would allow their true capabilities to be demonstrated without the complications of adverse weather or poor visibility. David's first shot preparation was notably brief compared to Sarah's extended routine, but his confidence suggested that efficiency rather than carelessness guided his approach. His breathing control and trigger technique showed the smooth precision of someone who had fired thousands of rounds under various conditions. The shot echoed across the valley, and All observers immediately focused their optics on the distant target. David remained in position, maintaining his sight picture while awaiting feedback on the shot's accuracy. His stillness and continued focus suggested complete confidence in his shooting process. The spotter's call confirmed the quality of the shot. Center hit, excellent placement. David had achieved a precise impact on his first attempt at 3,800 meters, matching Sarah's demonstrated accuracy with less extensive preparation time. Sarah felt a mixture of admiration and competitive excitement as she observed David's shooting performance. His efficiency and effectiveness represented a different but equally valid approach to extreme distance shooting. The precision of his technique, combined with his obviously extensive experience, marked him as a shooter of exceptional capability. As David prepared for a second shot, Sarah found herself analyzing his technique for insights that might improve her own shooting. His environmental assessment methods were different from hers, relying more on intuitive reading of conditions than detailed measurement and calculation. Yet his results suggested that his approach was highly effective. The second shot was fired with the same smooth efficiency as the first, and again the result was a precise center hit on the distant target. David had demonstrated two perfect shots at 3,800 meters with minimal preparation time and no apparent difficulty. His performance was impressive by any standard, particularly given the casual manner in which he had achieved such accuracy. Robert Williams stepped forward as David safed his rifle, clearly pleased with the demonstration. Excellent shooting from both of you. This has been an enlightening observation of extreme distance shooting capabilities. Sarah realized that what had begun as a simple demonstration of her shooting abilities had evolved into something more significant. The presence of official observers and the revelation of David's exceptional capabilities suggested that this encounter might have implications beyond casual interest in long-range shooting techniques. David Chun set his rifle aside and extended his hand towards Sarah with obvious respect. That was exceptional shooting, Ms. Martinez. Your technical approach and consistent accuracy are impressive. I can see why you've developed such a reputation in the long-range shooting community. Sarah accepted the handshake while studying David's expression. His praise seemed genuine, but there was something calculating in his eyes that suggested this demonstration had been more than casual observation. Thank you. Your own shooting was equally impressive, though I noticed your technique is quite different from mine. Military background. Something like that, David replied with a slight smile. I've had opportunities to develop long-range shooting skills in various contexts. Different situations require different approaches, but the fundamental principles remain the same. Robert Williams had been observing the interaction between the two shooters with obvious satisfaction. Ms. Martinez, we're grateful for your willingness to demonstrate your capabilities. What we've observed today confirms reports about your exceptional abilities at extreme distances. The formal tone of Robert's comment made Sarah increasingly curious about the true purpose of their visit. Reports? I wasn't aware that my shooting activities were being monitored by anyone official. Jim Henderson, who had remained quiet during most of the shooting demonstration, stepped forward with a slightly uncomfortable expression. Sarah, I should probably explain something. Mr. Williams contacted me last week asking about our most skilled long-range shooters. I mentioned your achievements because I thought it might lead to some interesting opportunities. Sarah felt a flash of irritation at being evaluated without her knowledge, but she suppressed the reaction in favor of learning more about what these men actually wanted. What kind of opportunities are we discussing? David glanced at Robert, who nodded slightly before responding. Ms. Martinez, we represent a government organization that has interest in extreme distance shooting capabilities. Your demonstrated skills suggest you might be valuable for certain specialized applications. The vague language was clearly intentional, but Sarah understood the implications well enough. Her military experience had taught her to recognize recruitment approaches, even when they were presented in indirect terms. Are you offering me a job? We're exploring possibilities, Robert replied carefully. Your technical knowledge and practical abilities represent the kind of expertise that could be valuable in various contexts. However, Any formal discussions would require security clearances and significantly more detailed conversations. Sarah appreciated the honest acknowledgement of the bureaucratic complications that would surround any official position. I assume this has something to do with applications beyond civilian target shooting? David's expression became more serious. Long-range precision shooting has applications in military, law enforcement, and intelligence contexts. Individuals with your level of expertise are extremely rare, particularly those who combine technical knowledge with practical shooting ability. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of another vehicle arriving at the range. Sarah looked toward the parking area and saw a modified pickup truck that she recognized immediately. The truck belonged to Marcus Thompson, a former Army sniper who occasionally used the range for his own long-distance shooting practice. Marcus emerged from the truck carrying a rifle case and spotting scope, clearly intending to spend time working on his own shooting skills. He was a quiet man in his early 40s who rarely engaged in extended conversations with other shooters, preferring to focus intensely on his own training regimen. "That's Marcus Thompson," Jim explained to the visitors. Another serious long-range shooter, though he tends to keep to himself most of the time. David's attention immediately focused on the newcomer. "Marcus Thompson, former 1st Special Forces Group." Jim looked surprised by David's recognition of Marcus. "I believe so, though he doesn't talk much about his military service." "How do you know him?" "Professional circles," David replied vaguely. "Small community of people with certain specialized skills." Marcus had noticed the group gathered around Sarah's shooting position and was walking in their direction. His expression showed mild curiosity about the gathering, though he maintained his typical reserved demeanor. "Afternoon, everyone," Marcus said as he approached. His greeting was general, but his eyes lingered on David with obvious recognition. "Didn't expect to see you here, Chun." David's response was equally restrained. "Marcus, good to see you again. I'm here observing some impressive long-range shooting demonstrations." Sarah sensed undercurrents in the exchange between David and Marcus that suggested a more complex history than casual acquaintance. Both men maintained professional courtesy, but there was subtle tension that indicated their previous interactions had occurred in serious contexts. Marcus glanced at Sarah's rifle setup, and the spotting scopes pointed toward the 3,800-meter target. "Working on the long shots today. I heard that impact from my truck. Sounded like good hits. 2 for 2 at 3,800 meters, Jim confirmed proudly. Sarah and David both demonstrated exceptional accuracy at that distance. Marcus's expression showed genuine interest as he looked between Sarah and David. 3,800 meters? That's impressive shooting by any standard. Mind if I observe while I set up my own equipment? Robert Williams had been studying Marcus since his arrival, clearly recognizing the potential value of having another skilled, long-range shooter present. "Mr. Thompson, we'd welcome your observations. We're evaluating extreme distance shooting capabilities and techniques." Marcus set down his equipment and accepted a spotting scope from Jim. "Happy to watch. I'm always interested in learning from other shooters' approaches to long-range challenges." Sarah decided to take advantage of having multiple experienced shooters present to explore some technical questions that had been puzzling her. "Marcus, I've been working on reading wind patterns at distances beyond 3,500 meters. The environmental indicators I use at shorter ranges don't seem as reliable at extreme distances." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Wind reading becomes exponentially more complex as distance increases. At 3,800 meters, you're dealing with multiple wind layers that can have different speeds and directions. The bullet spends enough time in flight to encounter several different wind conditions. David added his own perspective. "I found that focusing on the wind conditions in the final 1,000 meters of bullet flight often provides better results than trying to read the entire path. The bullet's velocity has decreased significantly by that point, making it more susceptible to wind deflection." Sarah found this insight intriguing. "That's a different approach for what I've been using. I try to read the entire flight path and calculate cumulative wind effects. Your method might be more practical for operational shooting." Marcus was setting up his own rifle while following the technical discussion. His weapon was another .338 Lapua Magnum, but, like David's rifle, it had the austere functionality of military equipment rather than the refined precision of Sarah's civilian target rifle. Different missions required different techniques, Marcus commented as he adjusted his scope. Competition shooting and tactical shooting share fundamental principles, but the practical applications can be quite different. Robert Williams was clearly pleased with the direction the conversation was taking. Having three highly skilled, long-range shooters discussing techniques and approaches provided exactly the kind of information his organization was seeking to understand. Mr. Thompson, Roberts said, would you be willing to demonstrate your own shooting techniques at these extreme distances? We're trying to understand the practical limitations and possibilities of long-range precision shooting. Marcus paused in his rifle preparation to consider the request. I'd be happy to take some shots, though I should mention that my approach tends to be more oriented towards speed and efficiency than maximum precision. Different priorities for different applications. Sarah was intrigued by the opportunity to observe another shooting technique. I'd be very interested in seeing your approach. Each shooter develops unique methods for dealing with the challenges of extreme distance shooting. Marcus completed his rifle setup with obvious efficiency. His preparation routine was even more streamlined than David's, focusing on essential equipment checks and basic environmental assessment. His entire approach suggested someone accustomed to operating under time pressure or adverse conditions. At 3,800 meters, environmental factors become critical, Marcus explained as he settled behind his rifle. But in many operational contexts, you don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect conditions. The ability to achieve acceptable accuracy quickly can be more valuable than perfect precision with extended preparation time. His first shot preparation was notably brief. Marcus spent less than 2 minutes assessing conditions and establishing his firing position before taking the shot. His efficiency was impressive, though Sarah wondered whether such speed might compromise accuracy at extreme distances. The shot rang out across the valley, and everyone immediately focused on the distant target through their optics. Marcus remained motionless behind his rifle, maintaining his sight picture while waiting for feedback on shot placement. The spotter's call was encouraging. 3 inches high, 1 inch left. Very good shot for rapid engagement. Marcus made quick adjustments to his scope and prepared for a second shot with the same efficient process. His confidence in his technique was evident, though his results suggested that his approach prioritized speed over maximum precision. Sarah found herself comparing the 3 different shooting techniques she had observed. Her own method emphasized detailed environmental analysis and precise calculation of required adjustments. David's approach balanced efficiency with accuracy, achieving excellent results with less preparation time. Marcus's technique prioritized rapid engagement, accepting slightly reduced precision in exchange for much faster target engagement. The second shot for Marcus was fired within 90 seconds of his first, demonstrating the speed advantage of his streamlined approach. The impact was again close to center, though not quite as precise as the shots fired by Sarah and David. David had been watching Marcus's technique with obvious professional interest. Excellent demonstration of rapid long-range engagement. Your technique would be valuable in contexts where target opportunities are brief or conditions are changing rapidly. Marcus saved his rifle and looked up from his scope. Different tools for different jobs. Maximum precision is ideal when time allows, but operational shooting often requires balancing accuracy against other factors like time constraints or tactical considerations. Sarah realized that she was observing 3 distinctly different approaches to the same fundamental challenge. Each method had advantages and limitations, and the optimal choice would depend on the specific requirements of the shooting situation. Robert Williams stepped forward, clearly satisfied with what he had observed. Gentlemen, Ms. Martinez, this has been an exceptionally enlightening demonstration. The range of techniques and capabilities you've shown represents exactly the kind of expertise our organization needs to understand. The formal tone of Robert's statement made it clear that the demonstration had concluded, at least from his perspective. However, Sarah sensed that the more interesting interactions were just beginning. David glanced at his watch and spoke to Marcus. "Do you have time for a conversation? It's been a while since we've had a chance to discuss professional matters." Marcus nodded, though his expression remained cautious. "Sure, though I assume this isn't purely social." Sarah began packing her equipment while listening to the exchange between David and Marcus. Their careful word choices suggested a complex professional relationship that involved sensitive matters requiring discretion. Robert Williams approached Sarah as she secured her rifle in its case. "Ms. Martinez, would you be willing to continue our discussion in a more private setting? There are aspects of potential opportunities that require more detailed conversation." Sarah had anticipated this request. "I'm willing to listen, though I should mention that my current civilian status suits me well. Any official position would need to offer compelling advantages." "We understand," Robert replied. The conversation we're suggesting would help clarify what might be possible and whether there would be mutual interest in pursuing anything formal. Jim Henderson had been observing the various conversations with obvious curiosity about the implications for his range and the shooters who used it. "Gentlemen, if you need a private location for discussions, my office is available. I can also arrange for additional range time if anyone wants to continue shooting demonstrations." David looked at the other participants in the day's activities. "Why don't we adjourn to Jim's office for some general conversation? No commitments or obligations, just an opportunity to explore possibilities and answer questions." Sarah agreed to participate in the discussion, though she remained cautious about any formal commitments. Her experience with military and government organizations had taught her to carefully evaluate opportunities before making decisions that might limit her independence. Marcus also agreed to join the conversation, though his body language suggested he was less enthusiastic about whatever David might be proposing. The relationship between the two men clearly involved some history that created complications for any future collaboration. The group moved toward the range office, leaving behind the shooting positions where they had demonstrated their exceptional long-range capabilities. The technical demonstrations had concluded, but Sarah sensed that the more significant discussions were just beginning. Jim's office was spacious enough to accommodate the group, with chairs arranged around a conference table that was typically used for range safety briefings and equipment consultations. The setting was informal, but conducive to serious conversation. Robert Williams took the initiative in starting the discussion. "Let me begin by explaining our organization's interest in extreme distance shooting capabilities. We represent a specialized unit that occasionally requires precision shooting at distances that exceed typical military sniper capabilities." Sarah appreciated the direct approach, though she noted that Robert was still being deliberately vague about specific organizational details. "What kind of distances are we discussing? And what types of targets or missions would require such extreme range capabilities?" David provided additional context. Typical military sniper operations rarely exceed 1,500 meters, with most engagements occurring at much shorter distances. However, certain specialized missions benefit from the ability to engage targets at 2,500 to 4,000 meters, or even beyond. Marcus leaned forward with obvious interest. "That's well beyond standard military sniper doctrine. What kind of situations would justify such extreme distance engagements?" "Scenarios where traditional approach methods are impossible or excessively dangerous," Robert explained. "High-value targets in heavily defended locations, time-sensitive situations where conventional tactics would take too long to implement, or operations requiring absolute precision to avoid collateral damage." Sarah found the discussion intellectually engaging, though she remained wary of the potential implications of any involvement with such missions. "I assume you're looking for more than just technical consultation. What kind of actual participation would be expected?" David's response was carefully measured. "Initially, we're interested in technical expertise and training capabilities. The ability to develop training programs for extreme distance shooting and to consult on equipment and technique optimization. Actual operational participation would be voluntary and would depend on individual preferences and qualifications." Marcus had been listening intently to the discussion, but His expression suggested ongoing reservation about the proposals being outlined. David, I assume this is related to the operations we've discussed previously. Have the requirements evolved since our last conversation? David nodded acknowledgement while maintaining careful discretion about sensitive details. Requirements have expanded to include longer distance capabilities and more sophisticated technical support. The missions we're anticipating will benefit from expertise like what we've observed today. Sarah realized that David and Marcus had obviously discussed similar matters previously, which explained some of the tension she had observed between them. Marcus's cautious responses suggested he had reservations about whatever collaboration was being proposed. Robert Williams addressed the group collectively. We want to emphasize that any involvement would be entirely voluntary and would occur within appropriate legal and organizational frameworks. We're not asking for commitments today, simply exploring whether there might be mutual interest in further discussions. The conversation continued for another hour, covering technical aspects of extreme distance shooting, potential training requirements, and general organizational structures that might govern any collaboration. However, specific details about missions, targets, or operational requirements remained carefully unspecified. As the discussion concluded, Sarah felt that she had gained useful insights into potential opportunities while maintaining her freedom to make informed decisions about any future involvement. The technical aspects of the work were intellectually appealing, but the operational implications would require careful consideration. David stood to leave, but paused to address Sarah directly. Ms. Martinez, I hope you'll consider the possibilities we've discussed. Your technical expertise and shooting capabilities represent exactly the kind of assets our organization needs. We would very much value your participation in our programs. Sarah shook hands with both David and Robert while giving a non-committal response. I appreciate the opportunity to learn about your requirements. I'll certainly consider what we've discussed and let you know if I'm interested in pursuing more detailed conversations. Marcus also concluded his conversation with David, though their exchange was more restrained and suggested ongoing complexity in their professional relationship. Whatever history existed between them created complications that would need to be resolved before any future collaboration could be effective. As the visitors departed, Sarah found herself reflecting on the unexpected turn her routine shooting session had taken. What had begun as a simple practice session had evolved into potential career opportunities that could significantly change her civilian lifestyle. Jim Henderson watched the SUV disappear down the access road before turning to Sarah with obvious curiosity. Well, that was certainly more interesting than a typical day at the range. Any idea what you're going to do about their offer? Sarah was securing her equipment in her truck while considering Jim's question. I'm not sure yet. The technical aspects sound fascinating, but I need to understand more about what would actually be expected before making any decisions. The afternoon sun was beginning to set over the Montana wilderness, casting long shadows across the shooting range where Sarah had just demonstrated capabilities that had attracted the attention of mysterious government representatives. She drove home, knowing that her life had reached a decision point that would require careful thought about her future direction. 3 days after her encounter with David Chun and Robert Williams, Sarah received an unexpected phone call while working in her garage workshop. The caller identified himself as Colonel James Patterson, speaking with the crisp authority of someone accustomed to military command. Ms. Martinez, I understand you recently demonstrated exceptional long-range shooting capabilities to some of my colleagues. I'm calling to extend a formal invitation for additional evaluation and discussion of potential opportunities with our organization. Sarah set down the rifle component she had been modifying and gave her full attention to the call. Colonel Patterson, I appreciate your interest, but I should mention that I haven't made any decisions about involvement with government shooting programs. Understood completely, the colonel replied. What I'm proposing is a more comprehensive demonstration that would allow you to better understand our requirements while giving us a more complete assessment of your capabilities. No commitments would be required from either side. The proposal intrigued Sarah, though she remained cautious about becoming too deeply involved in military operations. What kind of demonstration are you suggesting? We have access to a specialized facility that would allow testing of shooting capabilities under more challenging conditions than typical civilian ranges. The evaluation would take place over 2 days and would include technical discussions as well as practical shooting assessments. Sarah found herself curious about the specialized facility and the more challenging conditions the colonel had mentioned. Her civilian shooting experience, while extensive, had been limited to controlled range environments that might not fully prepare her for operational requirements. Would I be the only civilian participant in this evaluation? No, Kenneth Patterson replied. We're assessing several individuals with exceptional long-range shooting capabilities. David Chun spoke very highly of your technical knowledge and practical skills, but we need to understand how those capabilities translate to more demanding environments. The mention of other participants made the opportunity more appealing to Sarah. The chance to observe and learn from other skilled long-range shooters will be valuable regardless of any employment decisions. Where would this evaluation take place, and what would be the time commitment? The facility is located in Nevada, and the evaluation would require your presence for approximately 48 hours. All travel and accommodation expenses would be covered, and you would receive compensation for your time regardless of any future employment decisions. Sarah appreciated the professional approach and the acknowledgement that her time had value even for evaluation purposes. I'd be interested in participating, Colonel. When would this evaluation take place? Next week, if your schedule permits. I'll have someone contact you with specific travel arrangements and additional details about what to expect. After concluding the call, Sarah spent considerable time researching what she could find about specialized military shooting facilities in Nevada. Her internet searches yielded little specific information, but she found references to advanced training installations used for developing and testing specialized military capabilities. The following Monday, Sarah found herself on a commercial flight to Las Vegas, carrying only personal items and her shooting logs. She had been instructed to bring her technical records, but told that specialized equipment would be provided for the evaluation. The arrangement suggested access to weapons and ammunition that might not be available to civilian shooters. At Las Vegas Airport, she was met by a young man in civilian clothes who identified himself as Sergeant Davis. He was polite, but clearly focused on transportation rather than conversation, driving her in a government sedan through the Nevada desert toward an unmarked facility approximately 2 hours from a city. The facility was impressive in its combination of discretion and obvious capability. From the outside, it appeared to be a modest desert installation, but the security checkpoints and specialized buildings suggested much more sophisticated purposes. Sarah noted multiple shooting ranges extending into the desert, with target areas visible at distances that exceeded anything she had encountered at civilian facilities. After completing security procedures and receiving temporary identification credentials, Sarah was introduced to the other participants in the evaluation. The group consisted of 6 individuals, including herself and Marcus Thompson, whom she recognized from the Montana range. The other participants were introduced simply by first names. Jennifer, a former Marine Scout sniper. Robert, a civilian competitive shooter from Texas. Michael, whose background was not specified. And David Chun, who was apparently participating as both evaluator and participant. Colonel Patterson welcomed the group during a briefing session that outlined the evaluation process. Ladies and gentlemen, you're here because you've demonstrated exceptional long-range shooting capabilities that could be valuable for specialized operations. Over the next 2 days, we'll assess your abilities under various conditions and discuss potential roles within our organization. The colonel gestured toward a detailed map of the facility. You'll have access to shooting ranges with target distances up to 5,000 meters, environmental simulation chambers that can replicate various atmospheric conditions, and specialized equipment for testing extreme distance shooting techniques. Sarah was impressed by the scope of the facility's capabilities. The ability to test shooting under controlled but variable environmental conditions would provide insights that were impossible to gain at conventional ranges. Jennifer, the former Marine, asked the question that several participants were considering. "Colonel, will we be competing against each other? Or is this more of a collaborative assessment?" "Both," Colonel Patterson replied. "We're interested in individual capabilities, but also in how effectively you can work together and share expertise. Many of our missions require teams rather than individual operators." The first day's activities began with individual shooting assessments at distances ranging from 2,000 to 4,500 meters. Each participant was provided with identical equipment: high-end .338 Lapua Magnum rifles with premium optics and match-grade ammunition. The standardization was intended to evaluate shooter capabilities rather than equipment advantages. Sarah's first assigned target was positioned at 3,200 meters, a distance at which she was confident but not entirely comfortable. The unfamiliar rifle and ammunition required careful adjustment of her technique, though the basic principles remained the same. Her initial shots achieved respectable accuracy, though not quite matching her performance with her familiar equipment. The standardized rifle was excellent, but subtle differences in trigger characteristics and scope adjustments required adaptation time. Marcus was shooting at the adjacent position, working on targets at 3,600 meters with his characteristic efficiency. His adaptation to the standardized equipment was impressive, achieving consistent accuracy with minimal adjustment time. David Chun was conducting his evaluation at 4,200 meters, demonstrating the exceptional capabilities that had been hinted at during their previous encounter. His shooting technique was smooth and confident, suggesting extensive experience with this type of equipment. After the individual assessments, participants were paired for collaborative shooting exercises that simulated operational scenarios requiring coordination between multiple shooters. Sarah was partnered with Michael, whose background remained mysterious but whose shooting capabilities were immediately apparent. "Interesting facility," Michael commented as they prepared for their collaborative exercise. "I haven't seen capabilities like this outside of major military installations." Sarah agreed, while studying the target scenario they had been assigned. The environmental simulation capabilities are particularly impressive. Being able to test techniques under controlled but variable conditions is invaluable for understanding real-world performance. Their exercise involved coordinated engagement of multiple targets at distances ranging from 2,800 to 4,000 meters, with communication requirements that tested both shooting accuracy and tactical coordination. The scenario required precise timing and mutual support between the two shooters. Michael's communication skills were excellent, providing clear and timely information about target status and environmental conditions. His shooting technique was similar to David's approach, emphasizing efficiency and reliability over maximum theoretical precision. Sarah found the collaborative aspects of the exercise challenging but engaging. Her civilian shooting experience had been entirely individual, but the teamwork requirements added complexity that made success more satisfying. Their performance was apparently satisfactory, as the evaluators provided positive feedback while noting areas for improvement in their coordination and communication procedures. The afternoon sessions involved more complex scenarios that included moving targets, variable environmental conditions, and time constraints that tested decision-making under pressure. These exercises pushed all participants beyond their previous experience and revealed capabilities that might not emerge under standard shooting conditions. Sarah's performance in the complex scenarios was uneven. Her technical knowledge and shooting accuracy were consistently excellent, but her adaptation to rapidly changing conditions was less polished than participants with operational experience. Jennifer's military background became apparent during the pressure scenarios. Her ability to maintain accuracy while processing multiple tactical considerations was superior to the civilian participants, though her maximum distance shooting was not as precise as Sarah's capabilities. David Chin's performance throughout all scenarios was consistently exceptional. His combination of extreme distance accuracy, tactical awareness, and leadership capabilities marked him as someone with extensive specialized training and operational experience. During the evening break, participants were encouraged to discuss techniques and share insights about the day's activities. Sarah found these conversations valuable for understanding different approaches to the challenges they had encountered. "Your technical approach to environmental factors is impressive," Jennifer commented during their discussion. "My military training emphasized speed and standard procedures, but your method of detailed environmental analysis produces superior accuracy at extreme distances." Sarah appreciated the feedback while acknowledging the limitations of her approach. "Your ability to maintain effectiveness under pressure is something I need to develop. My civilian shooting experience hasn't prepared me for the complexity of operational scenarios." Marcus had been listening to the various conversations while maintaining his characteristic reserve. When Sarah asked about his assessment of the day's activities, his response was typically direct. "Different participants bring different strengths," he said. "The challenge is determining how those strengths can be combined effectively for operational requirements." The evening concluded with a technical briefing about specialized ammunition and equipment that might be used for extreme distance shooting missions. The presentation included information about projectiles and propellants that were not available to civilian shooters, offering capabilities that significantly exceeded standard commercial ammunition. Sarah's scientific background allowed her to appreciate the sophisticated engineering behind the specialized ammunition. The precision manufacturing tolerances and advanced ballistic designs represented significant advances over even the best civilian target ammunition. The second day began with individual evaluations at distances exceeding 4,500 meters, pushing all participants beyond their previous experience. At these extreme ranges, environmental factors became even more critical, and equipment limitations began to affect even exceptional shooters. Sarah's assigned target was positioned at 4,800 meters, requiring her to adapt all her technique for distances beyond her previous experience. The shot preparation became more complex, with additional calculations required for the extended bullet flight time and increased environmental effects. Her first attempts at 4,800 meters were unsuccessful, with impacts scattered around the target area rather than achieving the precision she was accustomed to at shorter distances. The experience was humbling but educational, revealing the limitations of techniques that had been successful at lesser ranges. David Chun was working at 5,000 meters with apparently greater success, though even his exceptional capabilities were being challenged by the extreme distance. His shot preparation time increased significantly, and his success rate was noticeably lower than at shorter ranges. Marcus was also struggling with the extreme distances, achieving impacts in the target area, but without the precision that characterized his performance at ranges below 4,000 meters. The experience demonstrated that even highly skilled shooters faced significant challenges when pushing beyond their previous experience. The afternoon session involved team scenarios that combined extreme distance shooting with tactical decision-making and mission planning. These exercises required participants to balance shooting performance with broader operational considerations. Sarah was assigned to a team with David and Jennifer, tasked with a complex scenario involving multiple targets at varying distances and priorities. The exercise required not only shooting accuracy, but strategic thinking about target engagement sequences and resource management. David naturally assumed leadership of their team, coordinating the tactical planning while ensuring that each team member's capabilities were optimized for the mission requirements. His leadership was effective but not domineering, encouraging input from other team members while maintaining clear decision-making authority. Sarah found her role evolving toward technical specialization, providing detailed environmental analysis and precision shooting at the most challenging distances. Her civilian background became an asset when combined with the tactical expertise of her teammates. Jennifer's contribution focused on rapid target acquisition and engagement at intermediate distances, freeing Sarah to concentrate on the extreme range shots that were beyond Jennifer's maximum capabilities. Their team's performance was excellent, achieving mission success while demonstrating effective coordination and mutual support. The experience gave Sarah confidence that her civilian skills could be valuable in operational contexts when properly integrated with tactical expertise. The evaluation concluded with individual debriefing sessions where participants discussed their experiences and received feedback on their performance. Sarah's session was conducted by Colonel Patterson and David Chun, providing perspectives from both organizational leadership and operational experience. Ms. Martinez, Colonel Patterson began, "Your performance over the past 2 days has been impressive. Your technical knowledge and extreme distance shooting capabilities are exactly what our organization needs for certain specialized missions." David added his assessment. "Your ability to achieve precision at distances exceeding 4,500 meters, combined with your scientific approach to ballistics problems, would be valuable for our most challenging operational requirements." Sarah appreciated the positive feedback while acknowledging areas where improvement would be needed. "I recognize that my tactical knowledge and experience with pressure situations need development, but I found the collaborative aspects of the exercises engaging and educational." Colonel Patterson nodded approvingly. "Those skills can be developed through training. Your fundamental capabilities in extreme distance shooting are much more difficult to acquire and represent the primary qualification we're seeking." The conversation continued with discussion of potential roles, training requirements, and organizational structure that would govern any future employment. Sarah learned that the position would involve both operational participation and technical development work, splitting time between mission support and advancement of long-range shooting capabilities. As the evaluation concluded, Sarah felt that she had gained valuable insights into both her own capabilities and the potential opportunities available with this specialized organization. The experience had been challenging and educational, revealing possibilities she had not previously considered. The return flight to Montana provided time for reflection on the intense 2-day experience. Sarah found herself genuinely intrigued by the prospect of applying her shooting skills to meaningful operational missions, though she remained cautious about the implications of such involvement. Her phone contained contact information for Colonel Patterson and instructions for communicating her decision about potential employment within 2 weeks. The opportunity represented a significant departure from her civilian lifestyle, but also offered the chance to use her exceptional abilities for purposes beyond personal satisfaction. The question facing her was whether the potential benefits justified the significant changes that acceptance would require in her independent civilian life. Sarah spent the following week in her Montana workshop, ostensibly working on rifle modifications, but actually wrestling with the decision that would fundamentally change her life's direction. The opportunity presented by Colonel Patterson's organization was compelling, but accepting it would mean abandoning the independence and simplicity that had defined her civilian existence. Her workshop had become a refuge where she could think clearly while working with her hands. Surrounded by precision tools and half-completed rifle projects, she found the methodical nature of mechanical work helped organize her thoughts about the complex choice she faced. The technical challenges discussed during the Nevada evaluation were genuinely exciting. The opportunity to work with advanced equipment and ammunition that exceeded civilian capabilities appealed to her scientific curiosity about extreme distance shooting. The specialized facility's environmental simulation capabilities alone would allow research that was impossible in civilian contexts. However, the operational aspects of the position created significant concerns. Her military experience had taught her about the weight of responsibility that came with missions where accuracy could determine success or failure. The transition from recreational target shooting to operational shooting would involve psychological pressures she had not experienced for many years. On Thursday morning, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Marcus Thompson appeared at her workshop door, carrying a cup of coffee and wearing an expression that suggested serious conversation rather than casual social contact. "Mind if I come in?" Marcus asked, gesturing toward the workshop's interior. "I wanted to discuss the Nevada evaluation and some related matters." Sarah invited him inside, clearing rifle components from a chair so he could sit down. Marcus's visit was unusual since their previous interactions had been limited to brief conversations at the shooting range. "I assume you're considering Patterson's offer," Marcus began without preamble. "I wanted to share some thoughts about what you might be getting into." Sarah appreciated his direct approach. "I've been thinking about little else for the past week. The technical aspects are appealing, but I have concerns about the operational requirements." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Those concerns are well-founded. Operational shooting involves pressures and responsibilities that are quite different from civilian target practice, no matter how skilled you are at hitting targets." His tone suggested personal experience with these pressures, confirming Sarah's suspicion that Marcus had operational background beyond typical military sniper training. "Can you tell me more about what to expect?" Sarah asked. "The Nevada evaluation gave me some insights, but I suspect the reality of operational missions would be more intense." Marcus spent the next hour describing operational considerations that had not been covered during the evaluation. He explained the psychological demands of shooting under time pressure, the complexity of making rapid ballistic calculations under stress, and the weight of responsibility that came with missions where failure had serious consequences. "The technical skills you demonstrated in Nevada are exceptional," Marcus said, "but operational shooting also requires mental discipline and emotional resilience that can't be evaluated in training scenarios. Some excellent target shooters struggle when the stakes become real." Sarah found Marcus's insights valuable and sobering. His description of operational challenges helped clarify the gap between her current capabilities and the requirements of the position she was considering. "Do you think I should accept Patterson's offer?" Sarah asked directly. Marcus considered the question carefully before responding. "That depends on what you want from life. The work is challenging and meaningful, but it requires sacrifices that not everyone is willing to make. Your technical abilities are certainly adequate for the requirements." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching Sarah's property. Looking out the workshop window, Sarah saw David Chin's SUV followed by an unfamiliar sedan. Both vehicles parked near the workshop, and several people emerged. David approached the workshop accompanied by a woman Sarah didn't recognize and two men in civilian clothes who had the alert bearing of security personnel. The woman was perhaps 40 years old, with graying hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to authority. "Ms. Martinez," David called out as the group approached. "I hope you don't mind an unannounced visit. I'd like you to meet Director Sarah Walsh, who leads our organization." Director Walsh extended her hand with a warm but professional smile. "Ms. Martinez, I've heard impressive reports about your capabilities. I wanted to meet you personally before you make any decisions about joining our team." Sarah accepted the handshake while noting that Director Walsh shared her first name, which created a momentarily amusing confusion. Marcus had stood up respectfully upon recognizing the obvious seniority of the visitor. "Director Walsh," Marcus said with formal politeness. "Unexpected to see you here." "Mr. Thompson," the director replied with equal formality. "I understand you've been providing MS. Martinez with perspective on our operational requirements." The exchange between Director Walsh and Marcus suggested a complex professional relationship, though both maintained careful courtesy. Sarah sensed that Marcus's previous involvement with their organization might have ended under complicated circumstances. Director Walsh turned her attention to Sarah. "Ms. Martinez, I wanted to discuss some aspects of our offer that may not have been fully explained during your evaluation. Your exceptional shooting capabilities represent exactly the kind of asset our organization needs, but I want to ensure you understand the full scope of what we're proposing." Sarah gestured for everyone to make themselves comfortable in her workshop, though the setting was hardly appropriate for high-level organizational discussions. Director Walsh seemed unconcerned by the informal environment, settling into a chair surrounded by rifle components and precision tools. "The position we're offering involves more than operational shooting missions," Director Walsh began. "We need someone with your technical expertise to lead development of advanced long-range shooting techniques and to train other personnel in extreme distance capabilities." This additional information significantly changed Sarah's understanding of the potential role. The prospect of leading technical development and training programs was more appealing than purely operational responsibilities. What would the balance be between operational missions and technical development work? Sarah asked. David provided additional details. Initially, we estimate approximately 70% technical work and 30% operational support. As you develop experience and our programs expand, that balance might shift, but technical leadership would always be a primary responsibility. Director Walsh added her perspective. Your scientific background and systematic approach to shooting problems represent capabilities that are extremely rare in our field. We need someone who can advance our technical capabilities while maintaining operational effectiveness. Marcus had been listening to the discussion with obvious interest, though he remained silent about his own thoughts regarding the offer being described. His presence seemed to make Director Walsh slightly uncomfortable, suggesting unresolved issues from their previous professional relationship. Director Walsh, Sarah said, I appreciate the clarification about the technical aspects of the position. However, I need to understand more about the operational missions that would be involved. What kinds of targets and situations would I be expected to handle? Director Walsh's response was measured and careful. Our missions typically involve high-value targets in locations that make conventional approaches impossible or excessively dangerous. The extreme distance shooting capabilities you possess allow engagement from positions that provide both tactical advantage and operational security. The vague language was clearly intentional, but Sarah understood the implications well enough. The missions would involve eliminating specific individuals under circumstances that required exceptional shooting accuracy and careful operational planning. I assume these missions are conducted under appropriate legal and organizational authority, Sarah said. Absolutely. Director Walsh replied firmly. All our operations are conducted within established legal frameworks and with proper governmental authorization. We're a legitimate government organization operating under appropriate oversight. Marcus shifted in his chair, his expression suggesting some skepticism about the assurances being provided. His body language indicated disagreement with something that had been said, though he maintained his silence. Director Walsh noticed Marcus's reaction and addressed him directly. Mr. Thompson, I assume you have comments about our operational procedures? Marcus looked uncomfortable at being drawn into the discussion, but responded honestly. Director, I think it's important for Ms. Martinez to understand that operational realities can be more complex than organizational descriptions suggest. Legal authorization doesn't eliminate the personal responsibility that comes with pulling the trigger. His comment created a moment of tension that revealed underlying disagreements about operational philosophy. Director Walsh's expression showed displeasure at Marcus's introduction of complications into what had been a straightforward recruitment discussion. Sarah found Marcus's perspective valuable, even if it complicated her decision-making process. I appreciate everyone's honesty about the challenges and responsibilities involved. This is clearly a decision that requires careful consideration of all implications. Director Walsh stood to leave, apparently concluding that her personal appeal had been delivered effectively. Ms. Martinez, I hope you will give serious consideration to joining our team. Your capabilities could make a significant difference in our ability to accomplish challenging and important missions. David remained behind after Director Walsh and her security personnel departed, apparently intending to continue the conversation in a less formal context. Marcus also stayed, though his expression suggested ongoing concerns about the recruitment process. Sarah, David said, I want to emphasize that the position we're discussing would allow you to make genuine contributions to national security while working at the cutting edge of long-range shooting technology. The combination of operational and technical responsibilities would be intellectually stimulating and professionally rewarding. Sarah appreciated David's continued efforts to present the opportunity in appealing terms, though she noted that his approach was more balanced than Director Walsh's direct recruitment appeal. Marcus finally voiced his underlying concerns. David, I think you should be more explicit about the personal costs that come with this kind of work. Operational shooting changes people, regardless of how justified or necessary the missions might be. David's response acknowledged the validity of Marcus's concerns while maintaining his advocacy for Sarah's recruitment. Marcus makes important points about the psychological demands of operational shooting. However, I believe Sarah's technical background and systematic approach to problem-solving would help her manage those challenges effectively. The conversation continued for another hour, covering practical aspects of the position, including security clearances, training schedules, and organizational structure. Sarah learned that acceptance would require relocating to the East Coast and undergoing several months of specialized training before beginning operational duties. As evening approached, both David and Marcus prepared to leave, though each offered to continue discussions if Sarah had additional questions. The day's conversations had provided valuable insights from multiple perspectives, though they had also revealed the complexity of the decision she faced. After her visitors departed, Sarah spent the evening walking through the Montana wilderness that surrounded her property. The familiar landscape and peaceful isolation helped clarify her thoughts about the life-changing choice she confronted. The opportunity offered by Director Walsh's organization was genuinely compelling. The technical challenges, advanced equipment, and meaningful mission purposes addressed professional aspirations she had not fully recognized until they were presented as possibilities. However, accepting the position would require abandoning the independence and simplicity that had defined her civilian life since leaving the Marine Corps. The operational responsibilities, while limited, would involve pressures and moral complexities that she had deliberately avoided for many years. 2 days later, Sarah made her decision. She called Colonel Patterson's office and requested a meeting to discuss the terms and conditions that would govern her acceptance of the offer position. Her conversation with the colonel confirmed that the organization was flexible about accommodating her concerns while ensuring that her capabilities were effectively utilized. The negotiated agreement included provisions for periodic returns to Montana, opportunities to maintain her civilian shooting activities, and guarantees about the types of missions in which she would be required to participate. The organization's willingness to accommodate her preferences suggested genuine appreciation for her capabilities and desire to ensure her long-term satisfaction with the position. 3 months later, Sarah found herself on a specialized shooting range in Virginia, working with equipment and ammunition that far exceeded anything available to civilian shooters. Her new responsibilities included developing training curricula for extreme distance shooting and consulting on equipment modifications that could enhance operational capabilities. The technical aspects of her work were as intellectually stimulating as she had hoped. The opportunity to experiment with advanced projectiles and propellants was advancing her understanding of ballistics physics in ways that would have been impossible in civilian contexts. Her operational missions had been limited and carefully selected to match her experience level and personal comfort zones. The organizational leadership had honored their commitments about gradually introducing her to the psychological demands of operational shooting. Marcus Thompson had eventually accepted a consulting position with the same organization, though his role focused on training and technical development rather than operational missions. His insights about managing the psychological challenges of operational shooting had proven valuable for developing training programs. David Chun had become a mentor and colleague, helping Sarah navigate the organizational culture while ensuring that her technical expertise was effectively applied to advancing the organization's capabilities. Their professional relationship had evolved into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared interests. The position had required significant adjustments to Sarah's lifestyle and personal relationships, but the intellectual challenges and meaningful purpose of the work had made those sacrifices worthwhile. Her exceptional shooting capabilities were being applied to missions that contributed to national security while advancing the state-of-the-art in long-range precision shooting. Standing behind her rifle on the Virginia range, preparing for a shot at 4,200 meters, using ammunition that represented the pinnacle of current technology, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from civilian target shooting to operational significance. The path had been unexpected and demanding, but it had led to opportunities and responsibilities that utilized her capabilities in ways she had never previously imagined. The target at 4,200 meters was barely visible even through her advanced optics, but her systematic approach to environmental analysis and ballistic calculation gave her confidence in her ability to achieve the required precision. As she settled into her firing position and began her final preparation sequence, Sarah felt the satisfaction of applying exceptional skills to challenges worthy of her capabilities. The shot rang out across the Virginia countryside, carrying with it the culmination of years of training, months of evaluation, and a life-changing decision that had transformed recreational precision into operational significance. The distant impact confirmed both her technical mastery and her successful transition from civilian marksman to professional asset. Her journey from polishing her rifle in Montana solitude to serving national interests through exceptional marksmanship had proven that expertise developed in civilian contexts could translate effectively to operational requirements when supported by appropriate training and organizational structure. The challenges ahead would continue to test her capabilities, but Sarah faced them with confidence gained through proven performance under increasingly demanding conditions.